There is a very cool promise in Zechariah, one that I've always loved. And what it basically says is, in that day, 10 men from every nation will take hold of your hand and say, "Let us go with you, for we have heard God is with you." The Living Bible says it this way, which is pretty amazing. And it says, "Let us share in your destiny because we've heard that God is with you." As amazing as that is, what does that have to do? How does that connect to the series we've been looking at about economic upheaval? Well, truly, everything we've looked at up until this point really culminates in this episode. Why? Well, the first episode was about faith. It was about how do we respond spiritually? Where do we apply our faith in these situations? In other words, what makes us different? And then the next episode, we did take a brief look at understanding market cycles. Why? So that we wouldn't be ruled by fear, but could use wisdom to see where potential blessings would lie, that we wouldn't miss opportunities. And then finally, in the last episode, we looked at having an entrepreneurial attitude. In other words, rather than being in denial, rather than just putting our head down and trying to just get by, we would recognize the problems and we would go to God. We would look to God with the expectation He would show us creative solutions, creative opportunities. And why does that culminate here? Because, see, all of those would appear to be about us. They would all appear to be about us being blessed. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to see you blessed, but the blessing is actually just the byproduct. The real point in how this culminates here is how it impacts others, how it relates to those around us. See, there's a huge misconception about leadership. There is this weird connotation today of leadership as a title, as a position, in that it somehow makes leaders different. And the reality is all of God's people are called to be leaders. All of them are. Now, how that plays out in each one of our lives is a bit different, and it depends on the function and the calling God has for each one of us. But ultimately, we are all called to be leaders. In fact, the actual definition of lead is interesting. It's initiative and an action that shows the way forward for others. That's the noun. The verb is actually really cool, is to take someone by the hand to cause them to follow as you're moving forward. See, in both cases, what happens? We're helping others move forward. And that's really why we need to respond in the best possible way during times of challenge. Why? So that God can make a difference in us. And ultimately, how will it impact those around us? How will it encourage and strengthen others during these challenges? And that leads to one other point, and that's about communication. Now, if you have the God-powered app, in the top left-hand corner of the bars, if you click on that, there's a search function. You can find a video we did early in the COVID lockdown called Help Them Feel Connected. And it would be worthwhile because we talk about how there are different levels of communication, but the ultimate point really was this. People fall into a couple of categories in these kind of situations. Now, one is the people who just seem to be responding, not just in fear, but trying to convince you that all is lost. Now, I formerly owned a wealth management firm, and one of the things we trained our team on is during tough times when clients would call frustrated, is to recognize they're not frustrated with you, but often they truly, while recounting the challenges, what they're really looking for is hope. They want someone to tell them it's actually going to be okay. So we need to recognize that there will be people that will be challenging. But more than anything, so often what they want is reassurance that God is still in control and that He has a plan and that by trusting in Him, it's going to be okay. In other words, that rather than buying into the fear, we would be different and that would be able to bring reassurance to others. But we also need to recognize there are those who seem like they're doing okay. We don't see the fear, we don't see how they're responding, but we need to recognize that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not struggling at the same time. And so we need to be leaders by taking action, but we also need to be leaders in how we communicate with others, helping them to navigate these kind of times. See, what is it all really about? Why does this culminate now? Well, you probably have heard me say it before because I do say it often, but how we respond impacts how we progress. But even more importantly, how we respond also impacts how others progress.